Let's continue in the book of marriage, level 3. And today we want to talk about what the author has here. The author is Abu Shuja'. The words of the author are in red. He said, وَيَجُوزُ لِلْحُرِّ أَنْ يَجْمَعَ بَيْنَ أَرْبَعِ حَرَائِرِ. It is permissible for a freeman, not a slave man, a free man who is not a prophet, to combine 4 free women. To combine, yani to marry at one time 4 free Muslim or non-Muslim women. 4 free Muslim or non-Muslim women, because as you know, a Muslim man, he could marry a Jewish or a Christian woman. So he has 4 slots available for marriage. Those 4 slots could be filled by a Muslimah or a kafirah. Not more. And as for the kafirah, according to the Shafi'i school, she has to be an original Jew or an original Christian. Being an original Jew or an original Christian, being an original Jew means that Judaism goes back in her family to before Jesus got the revelation. Judaism is in her family back before revelation came unto Jesus, alayhi salatu wassalam. And an original Christian is someone who Christianity is in her family back before revelation came to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. Who's like that? Most likely, many Jews, not the white European ones though. White European Jews might be that Judaism doesn't go back in their family to before Jesus, alayhi salatu wassalam. Then, according to the Shafi'i school, you can't marry those. And we cannot eat their slaughter either. And who's like those who Christianity goes back in their family to before Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam getting the revelation, like Ethiopian Christians, Lebanese and Syrian Christians. Those have Christianity in their family for a long time. Okay, so it's permissible for a free man who's not a prophet to combine, to marry at one time 4 free women, Muslim or non-Muslim women, not more. Why we said who's not a prophet? Because Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam is not restricted to this number. Because why not? Because the reason for there to be a limit to how many women you can marry is the increasing chances of injustice. injustice which is impossible to happen to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And so the reason for having a limit to how many wives you can have does not apply to a Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, what about slave women, though? We're going to see in terms of the number. What's going on there? We'll see. Let me not get ahead of myself. Question. There are some Jewish people who say a Jewish person is still considered Jewish, even if they are atheist or agnostic. Would a marriage between a Muslim man and such a woman be valid? I don't know. I don't know. I didn't hear any details here. Yani, I didn't hear those details. Yes, Abdul Qawi, question.
So what did you say?
Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question then, because I know a lot of Christians in this country probably only came only became Christian once they ancestors was indoctrinated by the Christianity faith from the Europeans. Would they count to marry them? I mean, or should not be, but should somebody ask them that question? Do your faith go all the way back to before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
I don't know if it's a condition to ask them according to Ash-Shafi'i, but if it turns out that they're not one of those, then it's not valid according to Ash-Shafi'i.
So the other question is, it's not your obligation. Is it our obligation to ask them that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's obligatory to search there.
All right, just in case somebody asks me that,
But I will repeat though. So I don't know if it's obligatory to search, but if someone found out that, for example, he married a woman, an African American woman, and then turns out Christianity got into her family from slavery in America, not from before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that's not valid according to Ash-Shafi'i. It will become clear for him that his marriage is not valid according to Ash-Shafi'i.
I got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So for women and not more, because of the authentic narration of Ibn Hibban, Al-Hakim, At-Tirmidhi, and others about a man named Ghailan, يحرم على الرجل الحر أن يجمع بين أكثر من 4 نسوة لأن غيلان أسلم على 10 نسوة فقال له النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أمسك عليك 4 وفارق سائرهن. This man named Ghailan accepted Islam while married to 10 women. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, keep four with you and depart the rest. Now there's something important and interesting to notice in this hadith. The importance and the interest that I am referring to is relevant to our time and how some people see some things. Because maybe somebody would see the Muslims and say, you said a man can have 4 wives? His eyes bulging out of his head. 4 whole wives? What? So it's like so crazy for someone. But that's so crazy for someone because it really doesn't know how things, how human beings were before our recent modern time now, and not long time before. Also, I'm not talking about something from 1,000 years ago, and even now in parts of the world. Not all of the world live like the West. The West, I mean Europe, United States, Australia. That's not how the whole world is. And it's their culture, this Western culture, to not have more than one wife. It was said about some of the non-Muslim men in this time. They said, strange thing about those people who said you cannot have more than one wife, but they said it's okay to be a homosexual. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Not from a Muslim person. What I'm trying to get at here, this one embraced Islam having 10 wives. Having 10 wives. And then when he embraced Islam, he had to get rid of some of them. So now you can imagine someone's mind is the reverse of what I just told you. Now I just told you about some person, when he heard about a man having 4 wives, he thought it was outrageous. What? So many? Now, look from another perspective. Someone would be in some other society, and then it would be said to him, you can only have 4 wives. Say, only 4? Is this oppression? You want to oppress me? Only 4? Uh, so a lot of times you need to remind people that the world is not like you see in USA and Europe and Australia. Having more than one wife is not something special to Islam. Uh, so the Prophet ﷺ told him, keep 4 and depart the rest. Had it been permissible to have more than 4 wives, he would not have told him that. And there was another man named Nawfal ibn Muawiyah. He accepted Islam while having 5 women, 5 wives. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Amsik arba'an wa fariqil ukhra. Keep 4 and depart the other. And still, yani, even in this Western society that said you can only have one wife, yani, they found the men are not having one woman though. Or they just don't even get married because they don't want to commit to one woman, so they don't get married. Or they get married and then they just have extramarital affairs on a vast, vast, vast scale. Yani, on such a vast scale that anyone is expecting that. There was a show, and these were non-Muslim people also, a dating show. So the woman said, did you ever cheat? And the man said, no. All the men looked at him like, come on, man. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Men, some questions here. Does a person need to make a new marriage contract when he embraces Islam if his wife is still a non-Muslim? No, not if she's a Jew or a Christian. If a non-Muslim has a Jewish or Christian wife, and then he embraces Islam, she's still his wife without a new marriage contract. Whereas, if a married non-Muslim woman embraces Islam, her iddah will start. If her husband embraces Islam before her iddah expires, then they don't need a new marriage contract. If he does not embrace Islam before her iddah expires, then she is free. She is released from this marriage. Question, is it that some of the Ansar divorced some of their wives to give to the Muhajirun? I don't know if some of them actually did so or only suggested. I know they offered. I don't know if they actually did so, though.
If the one who married, if both of them were not a Muslim, they were supposed to have, according to the law, a marriage contract, correct?
If someone is married to a non-Muslim, they're supposed to have a marriage contract according to the law?
No. For example, two of them were not a Muslim. Okay, one of them, for example, a man embraced Islam. If they had a marriage contract, according to their law, that's valid, isn't it? Otherwise, not like here, those who live together, they are considered like husband and wife. They should have previously their own marriage contract.
The non-Muslim couple?
Yes, their own, not Islamically.
Yeah, they're gonna need their own marriage contract. True. Yani, how do we deem the kafir as married? Whatever they deem as marriage, we will deem it for them as marriage.
Yes, that's what I'm telling. Otherwise, for example, in California, two men, a man and woman, if they move together, if they got divorced, she's entitled to whatever like any other wife. Not like that kind of. A bunch of kafirs, they live without having a marriage contract.
Yes. Yeah, and even in their own society, in that case, she's not entitled to what a wife would be entitled to.
Mm-hmm.
If they're just living together without a marriage. I mean, wa iyyakum. And then the author said, وَالْعَبْدُ بَيْنَ اثْنَتَيْنِ or وَالْعَبْدِ وَيَجُوزُ لِلْحُرِّ وَالْعَبْدِ. And for a slave to combine two, yani to have two wives at once. A slave man. So there's wisdom here. And it's important for any person, especially a woman, to put his opinions and feelings to the side and to accept what came in the religion. Even a slave man can have more than one wife. وَأَمَّا الْعَبْدُ فَلِقَوْلِهِ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ لَا يَتَزَوَّجِ الْعَبْدُ فَوْقَ اثْنَتَيْنِ. Due to the Prophet saying, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, a slave does not marry more than two. رواه عبد الحق ونقل غيره إجماع الصحابة. That hadith is narrated by Abdul Haq and others, besides this hadith as evidence, others also transmitted the consensus of the Sahaba about this. Some of the scholars said the Sahaba had a consensus that a slave man can have no more than two wives. Then if that's the Sahaba's consensus, then it's consensus for everyone. Because the consensus is evidence for the current generation, the generation of the conclusion of that consensus, and then it will be evidence for any following generation. And furthermore, a slave's case is half that of a freeman. A slave's case is half that of a freeman. Meaning, if a slave were to be punished, wouldn't he get half the punishment of a freeman? Yes, he would. Not full punishment of a freeman. Yeah, and take some lessons there too. What we are talking about right now, really, when it comes to some Western cultures, we're talking about more than one hot take, according to some. On one hand, we're talking about polygamy, having more than one wife. On the other hand, we're talking about slavery too. Both of these combined into one lesson, maybe someone's head wants to explode. But not if you are a believer with a firm heart. Then your heart is completely at peace here. A slave's case is half that of a freeman's case, so like a freeman, or since a freeman could have 4 wives, the slave can have 2. But what about the ayah? فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. Marry what is good for you of the women. The ayah is not here in the English. I fell asleep. Preparing the lesson, I fell asleep. I didn't squeeze the ayah in. Here's the ayah in the English. The verse, this verse here, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. So this verse, it means, marry what is good for you of the women. 2 by 2, 3 by 3, and 4 by 4. What does that mean, first of all? 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4. This means this man has 2 wives, and this man has 2 wives, and this man has 3 wives, and this man has 3 wives, and this man has 4 wives, and this man has 4 wives. That's what's the meaning of mathna wa thulatha wa ruba'. 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4. Okay, here's an ayah that legalizes 4 wives. How can we say that a slave man can only have 2? Or rather than saying how can we say, how do we explain the ayah to exclude the slave man? How is the slave man excluded from this ayah? وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى فَانكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ هكذا. So this ayah is the 3rd ayah of Surah An-Nisa. The whole ayah is not present on the screen. So what's present on the screen is فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. Marry what is good for you amongst the women, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, and 4 by 4. Here's the ayah. This proves that a man can have up to 4 wives. How do we explain the ayah not to include the slave people, the slave men? Because the ayah goes on after that. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً. If you are afraid that you will not be fair, then marry one. أو ما ملكت أيمانكم, or acquire what your right hands possess. Yani, get a slave woman or more than one slave woman. So how does this exclude the slave man? Because slave man cannot get a slave woman. It's not possible for a slave man to get a slave woman, except in a case. Without talking about that case, a slave man can't even get a slave woman. So this means that this ayah, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. This ayah is about free men, not slave men, because you just keep going and it's going to say, if you are afraid that you will not be fair, then marry one or get a slave woman. Then this means that it's a freeman, a free man being addressed here, not a slave man. Why a slave man can't get a slave woman? Because a slave man doesn't own anything. It won't be his slave woman, it will be someone else's. A slave man doesn't own anything. Then this ayah is addressing the freeman, not the slave man. It is understood from the author's statement that it is not recommended to have more than one wife without an obvious reason. And this is the case. How is that understood? What does it mean to say it is understood? When we say it is understood, such and such is understood from the statement. What does that mean? That means there's something that's not said, but it's understood. When we say there is something understood, we're saying there's something not said. So it's like saying there's something not said in the author's statement, which is that it's not recommended to have more than one wife without an obvious reason. And this is the case, meaning that which is understood without being said, that's correct. Because sometimes you can understand something from a statement. Sometimes something can be understood from a statement, but it's not the case. What you might understand from a statement without it being said might not really be the case. So that's why the scholars will say, it is understood from this statement such and such. And it's true. It's not merely understood, it is the case. And sometimes they would say, it's understood from this statement such and such. But that's not the case. Here, this is the case. But how is that understood? Let's look at a statement. When he says, وَيَجُوزُ لِلْحُرِّ أَنْ يَجْمَعَ, it's permissible for a free man to have more than, or to have 4 wives. How that's understood? Because like it's saying, when it says it's permissible for a free man, it's like saying he may. A free man may do something, may do so. A free man may do so. So there's a hint in there. A hint to not necessarily do it though, if you don't need to. Indeed, it is a responsibility. That's another thing. Responsibility, when this conversation comes up, some person wants to talk bad about our religion because of our marriage laws. And the only thing he sees is a man is having all these wives, so he can have lots and lots of sex. That's the only thing it means to him. Not more. Because that's a very small idea. He's not a believer and he doesn't know what the good deeds are. And he doesn't know what correcting your intention means. So you're going to remind him, this is not as easy as you think. There are responsibilities here. There's money involved here. There's time involved here. There's the emotions of people involved here. There's children involved here. It's not, Johnny, just like that. Having more than one wife's not the same as uh, what you do without being married, having many women without commitment. So it is understood from his statement that it's not recommended to have more than one wife without an obvious reason. And that's the case. Ibn al-Imad said, compared to the wife is the slave woman. Yani, meaning, just like it's not recommended to have more than one wife without an obvious reason, it's not recommended to have more than one slave woman without an obvious reason. Ibn al-Imad said, if his need is not fulfilled by one, then it is better for him to add, so that that would be more lowering of his gaze. So we'll help him keep his gaze low. He has one wife, his eyes are still wandering. And so that would be more protective of his private parts. So the one who can marry one woman and suffice, let him do so. Or if he could have one slave woman and suffice, then let him do so. And when we say slave woman here, we talk about a non-married and unmarried slave woman, an unmarried slave woman, not a slave woman who has a husband. And it could be that limiting oneself to one is obligatory, like the case of the fool, the irresponsible one who is barred from spending his own money. He has to seek permission of the judge to get married because he's restricted in his dealings, and marriage is a dealing or a deal. And also a crazy person. These are cases in which marriage depends on the need. Cases in which marriage depends on the need. That fool, if he needs to get married, then he'll get one wife and that's it. But he's too irresponsible to be able to do more than that. That's going to be by a Muslim judge's verdict that he can't get more than one wife. And the crazy person, he's going to need a guardian to get married anyway. For example, a man has a son. His son is crazy though, and his son needs a wife. Then he'll get his son married and not get him another wife. He doesn't need another one. He's crazy. You said you also get the opposite of that when people say, why can't a woman have more than one husband? Yeah, that's true. Those ones, mashallah, I think they didn't think before they asked the question. That's how some people are. They're not listening to you. They're waiting for you to stop talking so they can say something. Subhanallah. So then what do you say? You say, and if she gets pregnant, then who's the father? What they're going to say? You say, they can get DNA tests. What if they can't get a DNA test? Then who's the father? No, they can get a DNA test. Okay, I don't want to talk to you. Yani, completely missing the point here because you want to argue and you don't want to agree. That's why. Not because you cannot understand what I'm saying to you, but because you don't want to accept. Not just that, who is the father? Also, men and women are not the same in terms of emotions. So just because a man can have more than one wife doesn't mean a woman could have more than one husband, because men and women are not the same. One Kafir woman, you know what did a Kafir woman say? She was a comedian. She said, as if she was talking with experience but pretending like it's a joke, she said, a man, if he has an extramarital relationship, he'll get found out because the woman, she can't be quiet. Whereas the woman, if she has extramarital relationship, she can keep that man for years because he won't say anything. That's what that Kafir woman said. Subhanallah. So that shows you a big difference between men and women. She cannot have more than one husband for more than one reason. It's not good for her.
Abdi,
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
In one of your online classes, I think I heard you say Sheikh Abdullah said something like some of the women would have like more relations than the men, but the men are more brazen. Is that right?
But the Sheikh said that a woman has more potential to commit zina than a man. Except that the man is more brazen. Yeah, a woman would be more shy. So not as out as daring to do what a man is daring to do.
Oh, okay.
So as for the slave women, it is permissible to have multiple. It is permissible to have multiple slave women without restriction to a number. Yani unlimited. How many slave women a man can have? There is no limit to the number. So now someone might say, but what about this issue of injustice? Why is it that a man, you're saying he cannot have more than 4 wives because the more wives he has, the more likely he's going to be unjust? But he can have unlimited slave women? How's that? Scholars said the goals of marriage are not the same as the goals of slavery. And because of the nature of the relationship of marriage and its goals and its rules, it is more likely for a man to be unjust here. This injustice we want to thwart. We want to stop that injustice concerning the man and the woman in marriage. The relationship is different. It's not the same. The rules are different. They're not the same. So that's why.
I'm not sure, but I don't know. I'm not saying right. Way back, I heard up to 40 slaves a man can marry up to 40, or is that under another mashab, or it's just a fabricated thing?
I never heard of anything like this.
Mm.
But let me clarify something from your question, though. You just asked me, according to the way you said your question, about a man marrying a slave woman.
A man can marry. I mean, can have, not marrying in a
Okay.
way. I might be wrong.
So no, I have never learned anything about there being any limit on that.
Number, right? You never learned.
No, I never learned anything about. I never heard about it before.
Okay, I'm not even saying right. It came to my mind sometimes a whisper. Way back, I heard it. And I do not have any evidence of it.
Yeah, but not to mention also that having a slave woman is not necessarily because he wants to have sex with her. Maybe he wants a slave woman. Yeah, maybe he wants a slave, and he got a slave woman. It's not for that. So there's not going to be a necessary limit for how many he can have.
Jazakallah khairan. No, I just
I mean,
want to clear my mind. I don't want
yes, I understood.
yeah.
Inshallah. But I just wanted to clarify this also, just for the lesson. Is when we say slave woman here, that should not equal sex partner. So slave woman does not mean sex partner. Slave woman is a slave woman. If she's not married, then she's lawful for her owner. But doesn't mean he wants her, or that's what he got her for, or that's what he uses her for. So, yani, add that to why a man can have an unlimited number of slave women. These are the slaves. So a person, he might be buying slaves because they are slaves, not because they are people to have sex with. I think that's clear what I'm saying to you. So there is no limit to the number of slave women that one can have. If she's a married slave woman, then she is unlawful for him. But he can see all of her body except what's between her navel and her knees. His married slave woman, he can see her breast without a sin, or her back, for example. And it is permissible for a slave, whether he's a full slave, a normal, regular slave, or partially free. That means he had two masters and one of his masters set his share free, so he's partly free. On some days he's a free man, and on some days he's a slave man. Or a slave who is he's called mudabbar. He's a slave that his freedom is dependent on his master's death. His master says, when I die, you are free. Then he's called mudabbar. Any of these different types of slave men, they can only have two wives. Whether those wives are free women, so a slave man can have two wives, his wives might be free women. Or if his wives are slave women also. And as for a free man marrying a slave woman, we'll save that for next week, insha'Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop there. Any question? And Falti, that statement from the Sheikh, the non-Muslims, they say that also. Even just recently, I just saw something on, I don't know if that was Instagram or if that was YouTube, of some people having a discussion. And there was a woman who was saying, she said the women are worse than the men. And she was saying, like what I was just telling you the Sheikh Abdullah said.
Yeah, so the reason that I asked that was to connect it to another question.
Yes.
So sometimes I think it's presented like women don't have either a similar desire or a strong desire as well. So when I hear, especially like young women, for example, they talk about it in a way of like, I'm trying to find the right words. Maybe they mean like you are stuck with one partner forever. That's a possibility if you get married.
Yeah.
And so if a person were to say, think of it as a bala for the woman, because it could be, is this impermissible to say?
Subhanallah.
Because that, at least for me, it's I'm not going to say how I've thought about it, but this idea, I think there's this idea that women they're going to be fine with one man forever, but it doesn't mean that they might not have a wandering eye as well or want something different. So that's kind of how mentally I was connecting it, but I didn't know, is it okay for a person to say this? Like for the woman to be restricted in this way, she has to discipline herself. There might be a hardship in that.
Yeah, if bala means test, then I don't see a problem with the statement.
Okay.
Inshallah.
But if in English, if you say hardship, should you not say that?
That it's a hardship for her. Well, it might be true. If, or on a personal level, for some woman, might be her case. That this is difficult for her to be with one man.
Does bala just does it not hold the meaning of hardship?
Yeah, it does have the meaning of hardship.
Okay.
Maybe that's some woman's case. MashaAllah. SubhanAllah. But the rules of the religion are set for her protection and her benefit, and for the protection of everyone also. And amongst the things that help you understand these issues is to not look at them merely personally, but to have a bigger picture. To also think about the society. It's not all about what you want on a personal level. Also, you need to think about the society too. And both of these matters, the matter of a man having more than one wife and the matter of slaves, both of those are important for the society. Even the slavery is important for the society. It needs to be done properly, though. So, according to the proper Islamic rules, not according to the unjust rules of others. Because, yani, what are some of the alternatives to slavery? Incarceration and execution. Those are just some alternatives to slavery. So slavery is important. The institution of slavery is going to save a lot of people from being incarcerated and also save a lot of people from being executed too. MashaAllah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
On the subject, will you ever go back to that teaching that again? What you did, I think, 2 years ago.
What was
Talk
that?
about slavery. Will you ever go back and talk
The
about
slavery. Yeah, inshallah. Perhaps we'll open up the chapter of slavery in Abu Shuja and go over it. Inshallah.
Yeah, because I remember the class was very interesting. I wrote plenty of notes about it. Some people don't understand it. That slavery it's a good thing.
Yeah.
They don't understand.
It just needs to be practiced properly. Yeah, they don't understand it. I find it an interesting conversation to have with someone, and really, it's easy if you just have a few arguments lined up. It's easy to argue.
Inshallah, you do, Sheikh. Hey,
Inshallah. It's just the problem is people have certain thing in mind when they hear slavery. Something comes to mind that we don't have anything to do with. وَيِّ بَارَكَ اللَّهُ فِيكُمْ. Do slaves need to be Muslim if a master have sexual affair with them? I wouldn't use the word affair here. Does slave need to be Muslim? The scholars differed about this. If a person can have relations with non-Muslim slave woman. I don't have any details now, though. Yani, you should know the people of our day, like especially with a Western mentality, they think that they have reached the level of human excellence, and that whatever came before them of human existence is primitive. People of today, they feel about themselves that they have become advanced and they have reached new levels of knowledge, new levels of morals. And it's not the case. In fact, the knowledge of humans today is way less than it used to be. Not even long ago, even. People nowadays, they're not even smart as they were 40 years ago. And the morals of the people today are not like they used to be. And even the strength of their bodies is not like it used to be. Now we are weaker. In those old days, person could ride a horse. This takes strength. Riding a horse takes strength. You need muscles. He'd be riding the horse and wielding his weapon also, his sword. The sword's not going to be light. The sword is not made out of tin foil. It's heavy. His sword might weigh like 40 pounds. And he's holding it. He's wielding it. He's swinging it, and he's riding his horse. People are not like that now. Barakallahu feekum. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك